Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of my Guild Wars Let's Play and the beginning of Isobel Armant's journey in Tyria. The first, or vanilla campaign for Guild Wars is titled Prophecies, and takes place in a supercontinent also called Tyria. The footage you see in the background is of character creation and many of the introductory quests throughout Pre-Searing Ascalon. As I mentioned last time, characters in Guild Wars can have a primary and a secondary profession, or class, as it's called in most games. You choose your primary class at character select, and you can see that I've decided to go with a female Mesmer. Each class has a unique visual aesthetic that we will see when we begin collecting armor sets, the main form of horizontal progression in Guild Wars. This Mesmer class is unique to the Guild Wars franchise, and it was also the very first class I chose when I played the game for the first time back in 2005. It is a control class that can affect movement, use counter spells, and shut down both melee and caster classes. There are methods later in game to change your secondary profession, however your primary profession is set in stone after you create your character. Guild Wars 1, unlike its sequel, was a very human-centric game. Your only choice at character select is a human player character, which some consider to be limiting. We will see that while one character species is certainly not as much choice as we might like, I think ArenaNet does an incredible job making the various cultures you encounter throughout the world both unique and interesting with their own political systems, languages, architecture, religions, and clothing. Immediately following character creation, we see the opening cinematic, which sets the stage for the early game and foreshadows a cataclysmic event set to occur in the human nation of Ascalon. I'm going to let this play out using the in-game audio so you get the full experience. Unlike the early 2000s cinematic trailer you saw in the previous video, the cutscenes in Guild Wars 1 were shot entirely using the in-game engine.
The last day dawns on the kingdom of Ascalon. It arrives with no fanfare, no tolling of alarms. Those who will remember will speak fondly of the warm morning breeze. People carry on with their daily lives, unaware that in a short while, everything they have ever known will come to an end.
Scribe?
Yes, my lord.
These Char are relentless, but we shall hold the wall at all costs.
Yes, my lord.
Take this message to Sir Titus. Go forth and recruit the strongest, the smartest. Bring to me the bravest in all of Ascalon. Find me the heroes who will lead our kingdom to glory.
As you command, my king.
Alright, here we are in Pre-Searing Ascalon. This is one of the 4 human nations we will encounter throughout the game, and you can see that in terms of setting, this is a very Western European aesthetic that can best be compared to the medieval English countryside. Narratively speaking, the human nation in Ascalon is battling both internal and external threats. You'll see that Isobel goes to the Great Northern Wall and surveys the attacks from a species called the Char, which see humans as invaders and who will gain more backstory on as the story continues. The Ascalonians are also dealing with internal political strife over the rightful ruler of the kingdom. Several of the quests in the starting area have Isobel gathering tithes from rulers of estates to show their loyalty and determining if there is dissent amongst the people of Ascalon against the current king of Ascalon, Adalbern, and his son, Prince Rurik. In addition to this overarching narrative, Isobel meets many other people during what is essentially the tutorial area of the game, but will resurface later in the story, sometimes immediately, and in some cases, years later. One of the things that I appreciate about this game as an adult that I didn't quite understand as a teenager was the way that the writers at ArenaNet used breadcrumbs and character arcs to make the world feel alive and authentic. So pay attention to the characters you see on screen, as we are sure to see many of them again in a different capacity, especially a little girl whose flute you have to find. The Guild Wars franchise is also known for relying on a cast of NPCs that kind of serve as a major guild throughout the story. We encounter each of these NPCs in Pre-Searing here, and you see me doing quests for characters like Menlo the Monk, Devona the Warrior, and Aiden the Ranger. These characters will return at later parts of the story, and some will even show up in other campaigns. They all have rich backstories and different personalities that you learn more about by reading their dialogue. On that note, I want to make sure that viewers understand how the majority of content is delivered in Guild Wars. Since this game was released in 2005, much of the story, world building, and other game information is delivered primarily through quest text. There are voice cutscenes, but the quality is just okay if I'm being honest. As a fan of the franchise, I really enjoy doing most of the quests, and especially the side quests, as it gives you a better appreciation for the scope of the world and the events happening locally, regionally, and globally. There are certainly cases where quests can be reduced to the fetch, escort, or kill X formulas we see throughout the genre, but I think that ArenaNet did a decent job of making sure the why made sense for the setting and the lore of the game. The main story missions we will complete certainly follow a driving narrative that has many surprises and is crafted well for the most part, but it certainly has its critics. The side quests that are off the beaten path really bring the game to life in my opinion. You can certainly get away with just doing the missions in Guild Wars, but the side quests really add to the depth of the world, and will surely produce some aha moments for you later on. You will occasionally see footage of Isobel doing some more of the significant side quests throughout the Let's Play, and ArenaNet does a really good job of tutorializing various aspects of the game, which you see in the footage here. You can see an example of a viewer from Twitch jumping in game to help me complete a quest that has me create a party with an ally and enter an explorable area. Thanks, Yoon. I just mentioned the term explorable area, and I want to make sure you guys understand how that term is used. Guild Wars is heavily instanced and only has persistence in towns and outposts, which you see me discovering and fast traveling to in the footage. The game world in Guild Wars is absolutely huge, and the explorable zones all have their own distinct flavor. The world map is also really well done and gives the impression that there is a realistic continuity between environments. This system can best be compared to games like Diablo 3 or other lobby-based games. Guild Wars was one of the first franchises to adopt this system, and it certainly has its critics as well. Speaking of Diablo, ArenaNet was founded by former Blizzard developers, one of whom was Michael Bryan, who famously created the pretty well-known file type .mpq that you find in nearly every Blizzard game to date. MPQ literally stands for Mike O'Brien Pack. I also want to take some time during this video to go over the mechanics that set Guild Wars out from the rest of the genre so you all have a good understanding of how things like combat, class design, and build crafting work. At its core design philosophy, Guild Wars is essentially a card game. Classes are designed to fulfill specific roles and have skills designed to achieve their goals in combat. Melee professions like the Warrior are considered to be a frontline profession. Mesmers and Rangers are offensive-oriented range classes who fit into the midline. Defensive classes like Healing Monks set up further from the fight in the backline. The primary objective of the front line and the midline is to attack the enemy and defend the backline. The backline's role, therefore, is to sustain the attacking roles with healing and other defensive skills. You'll see me hover over Isobel's skills here in a little bit and notice that you have things like energy, skill counters, and pips that affect regeneration and degeneration of both health and energy. The build crafting in Guild Wars 1 has a lot of depth. There is some bloat that has developed over the years in terms of too many skills, and some skills being hardly distinguishable from each other, but part of the fun is tackling both PvE and PvP content in Guild Wars was in making your build. If you look at Isobel's action bar, she can only have a total of 8 skills. Those skills can only be changed in a town or an outpost and are locked when she goes into an explorable area or enters a PvP arena. As you can imagine, the possibilities for build diversity grow exponentially when you factor in the secondary profession combinations, weapon types, damage types, and gear stats. Health and energy management are major components of combat in Guild Wars. Your weapons, armor, and item modifications like sigils and runes will provide you with modifiers like additional energy, health, and damage under certain circumstances, such as when you were below 50% health or under the effects of an enchantment, a boon, or a hex. You'll also see in the video that Isobel has 4 skill or attribute categories that she can spend points in when she gains a level. You get a certain number of attribute points per level up, and like the skill bar, there can only be modified in a town or an outpost. The max level in Guild Wars is just level 20. You will likely reach that about a third of the way through the first campaign, especially if you do side quests. The rest of the game still provides challenging content due to the game mechanics I mentioned earlier. Beyond higher health pools, max level mobs use the same skills as players, so Isobel is surely going to face mobs that can counter her build. And again, that's where the theory crafting comes in to try to build the perfect skilled deck. As you can see in the gameplay footage, there weren't too many challenges during my time questing through the Ascalon countryside. I completed a few introductory class quests that are designed to give you a taste of each profession before you choose your secondary and move on to the next stage of the game. I had hours of footage I had to trim down for the video, and there were certainly moments where I bit off more than I could handle, though thankfully I have not died yet. If you and your party are defeated in an explorable zone in Guild Wars, you are resurrected at various resurrection shrines scattered across the landscape. This changes when you are in a mission, as you are forced to restart from the very beginning. If you look at the UI elements, you can see a mini-map and a zone map that I enable occasionally to get a better situational awareness for where mob patrols and quest objectives are. Those familiar with the phrase mob density from ARPGs will quickly recognize that many of the mob spawns in Guild Wars are predetermined patrol routes, and their aggro radius is determined by the circle you see around your character's dot on the map. Guild Wars was designed first and foremost as a PvP game, believe it or not, and there are many ways in which you can provide tactical information to your party members, such as clicking control and clicking on your health or your energy to let your party members know in chat when you're low. You can also draw or ping the minimap in real time to draw attention to critical information that could keep your team from wiping. There is a dedicated speedrunning community in Guild Wars who know these patrol routes and mob behaviors like the back of their hand. Those of you watching on Twitch have probably seen some of the more experienced players trivialize difficult content because of their game knowledge. I also want to spend some time briefly discussing items, trading, and the in-game economy. As you see in the footage, items drop off of mobs and have a value in gold that can be in many cases traded with other players or merchants. There are player-bound items, but the economy in-game relies heavily on barter rather than using the in-game currency of gold or platinum bars. In-game or highly sought-after cosmetic items are usually traded for crafting materials in addition to platinum, since there is a cap to how much a character and account can hold. The crafting system in-game relies heavily on the salvaging system. You can see Isobel pick up various items and trade with merchants to buy a salvaging kit that allows her to break down items for base crafting materials, which can be used to craft the armor sets I mentioned earlier. Each part of the game has a dedicated armor set that is class specific that can add to a player's prestige. Items can also drop as unidentified, requiring an identification kit bought from merchants to reveal their properties. There are certain unidentified weapons of quality levels that are very valuable. Maybe Isobel will get lucky during her journey and score something big. I want this run to have some integrity, so I won't be accepting any handouts beyond what Isobel has found or traded for herself. You may have also noticed in the footage that there are chests scattered throughout the game that can drop additional items and are on specific spawn locations that can be farmed if you so desire. Later on in the game, the chests for specific regions will require keys that can be brought from merchants and are good to have when you are in explorable zones. NPCs called collectors can also be found in many explorable areas, sometimes tucked away in remote locations that offer special crafting materials or weapons and armor for trash mob items. I think more games should incorporate things like this to drive traffic to different parts of the game. Isobel comes across various monuments and statues throughout her travels that provide exposition and lore about the game world. Many of these statues have a simple plaque that provides information about the human gods, but some of them, like the statue dedicated to Melandru, where Isobel battled a creature called the Grawl, provide boons like Mending, which provides health regeneration pips and can sometimes save you in tough situations. Later on, we will learn that some statues are also gateways to other worlds and more difficult content. We'll learn more about that later. I wanted to make sure that I thank the viewers who tuned in and watched me gather this footage. I had several questions about chasing some of the more challenging titles, such as Survivor, where I don't have any character deaths before reaching match level, and I certainly intend to try my best to avoid dying, but I won't consider it a run-ender if I do happen to wipe. You'll know when I die for the first time because I will make sure to include it in the footage. I'm also open to any critiques about my skill deck. One thing I definitely want to improve on is my ability to build a decent skill deck and team composition that leads to successful runs through each campaign mission, so any positive feedback towards that end is much appreciated. I can get bogged down in a one-size-fits-all approach, and I like to have a better game knowledge that allows me to identify what skills are best for specific situations. I do, however, want to avoid trivializing the game with certain skill and team compositions, so please keep that in mind with your suggestions. If there are parts of the game that you guys want to make sure I don't miss, please let me know in the comments or on Twitch, and I'll do my best to get footage of Isobel experiencing that in her journey. Special thanks to my friends on Discord who came up with the name. I think I may end up using it for characters in other games as well. If I could rename my future henchmen, who you will see soon, I would gladly use all the names that you guys suggested. I'm also down to create a new guild for any that are interested in tagging along, as I've been in the same guild for a very long time, but I'm the only active player since other friends have stopped playing. We can even vote on the guild name and take suggestions from viewers. I'm definitely open to that. That will allow us to create a guild cape and eventually a guild hall, but that content is saved for a much later step in Isobel's journey. Alright guys, that wraps up this episode. Leave your vote for Isobel's secondary class in the comments section, and I'll be sure to choose that secondary profession by the time we end the next episode. Next time we will face the Char threat head-on and experience a truly game-altering event that was foreshadowed in the opening cinematic. I also appreciate any feedback on the video itself in terms of editing, pacing, and things you guys would like to see in future episodes in terms of commentary. I should be getting a new microphone soon that will hopefully improve the audio quality of the commentary, and my intent is to provide uninterrupted gameplay splices going forward so that you guys get a better idea of what is going on in game, and that can also be used for reference if someone is trying to complete a particular part of the campaign. You can watch me gather footage for these episodes live on my Twitch channel, which you can find in the video description below. As I mentioned last time, if you have a character around my level and you would like to join up to complete the campaign missions, please feel free to send me a tell in game. The game and all of its campaigns and expansion are buy once, play forever, so check it out if you are interested. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with each episode. See you next time, guys.